Sam Baker, if you're watching, this video's for you. Get a kick out of that. Hello folks, it's Dave with URAL Motorcycles. Back with you once again, and today we are going to be talking about spare tire to the front. Two different styles. So what we have behind me is Sergey, our mechanic. This is his old 2014 California test bike for the emissions that we had to do back then. This was the first year of EFI, the first year of three-wheel disc brakes. The 2014 is going to be representing 2015 to 2019 as far as the spare wheel to the front position. 2014, we had a 1 year there where the spare wheel hub was like the big drum hub, because we were still testing the little hubs to make sure that they were going to survive in the rear position. Sergey's spare now is actually the small hub. So this will be representing, like I said, 2015 to 2019. Now, I didn't get the video all through the pandemic, and it might have been a good thing, because what I came to find out was that the C-clip that holds the bearing in on this wheel, and we'll get to that later when we physically take it apart, the C-clip was eliminated, and the brake adapter spacer that holds the front disc on was actually changed to accommodate where the C-clip was. So this green 2021, this is going to represent 2020 to current 2022. And I found that out quite by accident. It kind of slipped by me. I'm humble enough to say that I learned something new while I was making this video. January 31st, 2020, the new front hub had gone into play, and basically all it was it eliminated the groove where the snap or the C-clip would snap in, and the new brake adapter is actually the way it's made now. It actually holds the bearing in place, where on this style the C-clip went in and snapped in to hold the bearing. The little montage at the beginning was just to show what I did to prep these, even though I would have, in the past, I would have done this outside. Because of the weather, I can't. So to simulate roadside repair, I actually made sure I used wrenches, no ratchets. And you might want to get a pen or pencil and a notepad, and anything that you see that I'm using that isn't in your toolkit, make a note of things you might want to add to your trunk in the event that you get a flat in the front position. On this one, you'll see I used a 4x4 to prop up the sidecar. Keeping a little chunk of 4x4 in the trunk can serve many purposes. You can put it behind your tire if you're on an incline to prevent the bike from rolling, like a tire stop. This one is actually 15.5 inches, and it just fit under there perfectly. Anything 14 to 16 would probably cover it. But I like 4x4 over 2x4 because, if you do use it as a tire stop, it actually does a little bit better job. Now on this one, I didn't have a second piece of wood, so I just used a jack stand, but maybe you want to carry a scissor jack to use in a case like this. I put them up on the center stand, and then I used that as a fulcrum so I could basically teeter-totter the bike. If you can lift the bike up on the center stand, you can definitely lift it from the front fender clip to get something up under the frame to support the wheel off the ground. Before I got the bikes up off the ground, I broke the two bolts that are holding the front brake caliper on each individual one. This has got the new front end, this has got the old style front end. So on this one, I loosened the pinch bolt, and then I actually used a screwdriver, which is more likely that you would have in your toolkit, to loosen the axle. Now this one has got the new axle, so it has the two pinch bolts on the swing arm, and so you got to loosen those two pinch bolts with a 6mm hex key or Allen wrench, and then you got a 10mm on the end to hold it, and then a 17mm to break the nut loose. So basically everything I've used here is two 17mm on this bike, and a screwdriver. And then on this bike, I used a 10 millimeter, a 6 millimeter, 17 millimeter, and that was it. And that covers the brake caliper and the axles on both. And then you have your spare wheel nut to take your spare off the trunk. This one had a rack, this one didn't. That's where we're at right now. So pretend we're on the side of the road. And like I said, this represents 2015 to 19. Unless you happen to have the new style spare for your 2014, then it would cover that. This one is going to go from 2020 to 2022. Don't forget that the axles are reverse thread. It's not lefty, loosey, righty, tighty. It's exact opposite on both axles, whether it's an older URAL or a newer model. All right, enough talking. Let's get to this. You're gonna remove the 2 bolts that hold the caliper to the rotor, or the caliper to the bracket, and remove it from the rotor. We've already broken these loose while it was on the ground, because if you tried to do it while it was up in the air, it would move all around on you and just be a hassle. And remove that off the caliper and just gently set it to the side. If you're on the side of the road and you happen to have a rag or something, you could wrap that around it. And then if I was in the shop, I'd actually put something between the pads. Like I have a piece of rubber that I use, or you can use a piece of wood shim or something. On the newer style axles, I actually take the 10 millimeter that you were using to hold the axle tight on the other side and bump it through a little bit until you can grab it. And then I just set that aside like that. You can remove the tire the rest of the way. And take note of the forged brake caliper bracket on the new style when we go look at the older bike. Sometimes trying to get the stuff filmed while there's other stuff going on in the warehouse is just an impossible task. So for the older bikes, we got the same thing going on. You got the 2 bolts holding the caliper to the caliper bracket. Take those 2 out so you can remove this off the rotor. And you'll notice there's 2 other bolts because the old bracket before the forged one on the new bikes was 2 pieces. You can leave all this together though. Just remove these 2. Gently lay that to the side. Then we can continue removing the axle. Lay that aside, just like the other bike. While I got these both off for comparison, I should note too that the rotor hasn't changed. Even though the spacer changed internally, the thickness is still the same. But you'll notice in the early days they were putting button head Allens on there to hold the rotor on, and the new style has a cap. And if you have the older style, before you go on a trip, not when the need arises, but prior to that, you may want to swap out your hardware to something like this so you can actually positively engage a hex key to get it broken loose. Where on these, they have a tendency to slip and strip out the head because the area that it engages the tool is much shallower than these, and this actually allows you to step up from a 5mm to a 6mm. So we're going to wrap up the video for this week. We will continue this and finish up both these bikes in part 2 next week. But anything longer than 12 to 15 minutes, it kind of screws with my viewer retention rate on YouTube. So be sure and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll get notification when the next video launches, or any video pertaining to tech, product spotlights, or the goings on with the company. So, oh my God. I swear these people just love to mess with me. As I was saying, hit the subscribe button. That way you'll get early notifications for any of the videos that I'm putting out in the future. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to you next week.